Picture this, the year is 48 C. A 15-year-old girl crosses the threshold of the Palatine Palace. White silk clings to her frame. A crown of myrtle rests atop her golden hair. The Senate rises. The people roar their approval. Emperor Claudius, 50 years old, his left leg dragging, his voice caught in the shadow of expectation, takes her small hand. His name is legend. Hers will become something else entirely. Valeria Messalina. Remember it. Rome tried to forget. They expect her to save them. The blood from Caligula's assassination is barely scrubbed from these corridors. For years of madness, executions for sport, incest paraded as policy. A reign so unhinged that his own guards cut him down in a tunnel beneath this very palace. Rome needs stability, virtue heirs. They dress her as salvation. Within 10 years, she will transform this palace into something the ancient sources can barely describe without trembling. Senators will become prisoners. Aristocratic daughters will vanish into her chambers and return changed, silent, broken, carrying secrets to their graves. She will stage contests that would shock professional prostitutes. She will orchestrate blackmail on a scale that would make modern intelligence agencies pause. And when Rome finally reacts, her statues will be dragged through the streets and shattered. Her name chiseled from every inscription. Official records rewritten as if she never existed. Damnatio memoriae. Damnation of memory. 2,000 years later, you are still listening. Because the things Rome tried hardest to erase are the things we cannot stop uncovering. When corruption is not a symptom of power, but power itself. Rewind to 38 C. The forum is alive with voices. Merchants hawking silk. Senators arguing over grain. Children darting between marble columns. Rome looks invincible, but the rot is already there. Tiberius has died, alone and hated on Capri. Then came Caligula. 4 years of madness. Executions for amusement. Senators forced to watch him violate their wives at dinner. His horse appointed to the Senate. Rome gasped, then recoiled. On January 24, 41 C, the Praetorian Guard intervened. 29 stab wounds ended Caligula's life. His wife dead beside him, their infant daughter crushed against the wall. Rome exhaled, and then panicked. Who comes next? Behind a curtain, they find Claudius, the stammering uncle, 50, awkward, drooling slightly, a limp marking him as a lifelong outsider. He never wanted power. He never expected it. The guard proclaims him emperor, not because he is competent, but because he is alive. Rome needs someone wearing purple before the city tears itself apart. Claudius knows he is a placeholder. He must secure legitimacy, heirs, proof the gods have not abandoned Rome. So he marries Valeria Messalina, 15, third cousin, a bloodline tracing back to Aeneas himself, sculpted pale skin, golden hair, features so perfect they seem carved. On paper, she is perfect. The Senate approves. The people cheer. Rome has a future again. But nobody asks the question Rome will soon learn: what happens when a child is dressed as a goddess, placed in a palace where every door opens at her command? The first 2 years are textbook perfection. Messalina bears Claudius a daughter, Claudia Octavia, then a son, Britannicus, named for his father's conquest of Britain. The Senate exhales. The empire has heirs. In public, she is everything Rome demands, draped in modest silk, head covered, eyes downcast. Every gesture choreographed for virtue. She is the perfect Roman matron. But Rome divides women into 2 categories: the matrona and the meretrix. The wife and the courtesan. The sacred and the profane. One lives in the atrium, raising children and guarding honor. The other in the lupanar, shedding civilization like a cloak. Messalina decides to be both. Virtue is a stage. Power is the backstage. Around 42 C, a senator returning from Austria visits the Subura, Rome's red light district. Narrow streets smelling of piss and cheap wine. In a dim insula, a woman enters. Dark wig, heavy eyes, perfume masking wealth. Their eyes meet. He recognizes the Empress herself. Tacitus confirms, she allegedly adopted the working name Lisa, becoming a regular, not for money, not for desperation, but for thrill. Every man who did not recognize her became an unwitting accomplice. Every man who did recognize her became captive. Messalina weaponized Rome's hypocrisy. The public sees virtue. The private sees cunning. The brothel was only the laboratory. The true theater of Messalina's power was the Palatine Palace itself. Long corridors gleamed with marble, statues of gods and ancestors lining the walls, torches flickering shadows over every surface. Senators arrived in their finest togas, aristocratic women in stoli, the air heavy with perfume and expectation. Golden platters of roasted dormice and honeyed dates sat on low tables, wine flowing from jeweled cups. Everything seemed civilized, Roman, perfect. But beneath the surface, chaos waited. Messalina gave a single signal. Doors closed. New participants arrived: gladiators, actors, foreign captives, teenage sons of patricians. What followed were forced performances, humiliating contests, and orchestrated games of dominance designed to expose weaknesses and hypocrisy. Aristocratic women were coerced into roles meant to degrade them, husbands frozen in fear as their wives obeyed. Refusal was unthinkable. Shame is the most enduring form of power. Messalina collected secrets like treasures. Senators, generals, freedmen, every witness became part of her network. No one dared move against her. Loyalty could shift, but shame endured. Even Claudius, aware of her actions, remained paralyzed. Acting would expose his own weakness before the empire, risking civil unrest and scandal. By dawn, she emerged in silk, veiled, serene, performing rituals of chastity and virtue, while the palace and Rome's elite remained bound to her will. Every gesture, every glance, every whispered word in the palace became a thread in her web. Messalina had turned Rome's hypocrisy into a weapon, a game she alone mastered. Her influence extended beyond the palace walls. Couriers, spies, and servants became unknowing instruments of her strategy. Information flowed through her hands like blood through veins, and with it, she orchestrated both fear and admiration, controlling not just the elite, but the pulse of Rome itself. While Messalina wove her web, Claudius built Rome's foundation with diligence. Aqueducts, court reforms, and British campaigns bore his mark, the work of a competent, if underestimated, emperor. Yet behind closed doors he was trapped, unable to confront his wife without risking the civil fabric of Rome. He watched as Messalina's influence grew, powerless to intervene without admitting his own failure. Even the strongest ruler can be a prisoner of circumstance. Claudius's stammer and limp masked a mind that calculated every move. He knew of the palace intrigues, the contests, the whispered acts in the Suburra district. But Rome needed stability more than justice, heirs more than truth. So he looked away, pouring his energy into administration while the corruption of the court sped unchecked. Messalina, fully aware of her husband's limitations, expanded her operations. Aristocratic families, senators, even freedmen became pieces in her game. Her intelligence and cunning transformed personal transgression into systemic power. The palace had become a microcosm of Rome itself, elegant on the surface, rotting beneath. Her children, Claudia Octavia and Britannicus, were her shields and symbols. Through them, she secured Claudius's public trust, yet privately challenged his authority at every turn. Rome applauded her motherhood, but few understood the empire she was quietly building behind the veil of silk and ritual. The emperor's isolation became his greatest weakness. Freedmen whispered, allies grew wary, and every decision carried the weight of potential scandal. Claudius ruled an empire externally stable, internally fractured, and in silence he watched the threads unravel, knowing any interference could ignite a storm. Power often thrives where the law cannot touch it. By 42 C, Messalina's reputation had transformed the palace into an empire of secrets. Senators arrived at banquets expecting diplomacy, but left with public and private compromises. Aristocratic women were coerced into humiliating performances, each act carefully observed and recorded in the memory of witnesses. Obedience was survival. In the empire, silence is complicity. The legendary contest with Scylla, a famous courtesan, became the talk of Rome. Tacitus described it with fascination: who could outlast more partners in a single night? Whether true or exaggerated, the story reflected a reality Romans could not articulate: a woman exercising sexual dominance as a weapon, rather than submission. Every performance, every scandal, expanded her influence. Senators feared exposure more than war. Aristocratic families prayed their daughters would survive intact. Messalina transformed shame into currency, building a network of unspoken obedience and strategic alliances. Claudius remained outwardly oblivious, but his court whispered. Freedmen begged him to act, but the risks were too high. Confronting Messalina could spark civil war, or ruin the empire he was struggling to hold together. The stammering emperor became a silent observer to his own household's decay. Messalina's reach even touched foreign diplomats. Letters carried hidden threats, invitations masked as courtesies, and alliances secured with silent leverage. Every corner of Rome became a stage where she orchestrated the empire's obedience without firing a single sword. The palace was her universe, and in it she dictated the rules. Every whisper, every glance, every private act became an instrument of authority. Her power was not inherited, it was seized, honed, and weaponized. Fear can become a ruler's most loyal servant. In 48 C, Messalina pushed Rome to its breaking point. While Claudius oversaw grain shipments in Ostia, she publicly married Gaius Silius, a rising senator. This was no secret affair, contracts signed, vows exchanged, witnesses present. Tacitus records the frozen disbelief of Rome's elite as the Empress flaunted her audacity in broad daylight. Power without limits invites catastrophe. Narcissus, Claudius's freedman, rushed to deliver the news. The emperor, initially skeptical, faced the unbearable truth: his wife had challenged the empire itself. Orders were issued. Soldiers arrived at Messalina's villa in Luculis, where she stood with her mother, poised but frozen. Her children, 9 and 7, were held as potential hostages. Nothing could sway the course of fate. Messalina dropped to her knees, begged, pleaded, offered her life and her children. The tribune, unnamed in records, drove a dagger through her. Valeria Messalina Augusta fell at 25, in a pool of blood beneath the trees where she once ruled. Claudius decreed Damnatio memoriae, statues dragged through streets, inscriptions chiseled clean, records rewritten. Rome intended her story to vanish, but it did not. Her audacity, cunning, and influence remained etched in memory, in whispers, in fear. The city of Rome trembled under the shock. Courtiers whispered of consequences, families mourned both fearfully and secretly, and the lessons of transgression became immortalized in silence. Every street, every villa, remembered her audacity in the way shadows remember light. Empires can erase names, but not the consequences of power. Messalina's fall did not end Rome's cycles of tragedy. Claudius remarried quickly. Agrippina the younger, more cunning, more patient, would poison him and place Nero on the throne. Her children, Octavia and Britannicus, faced fates as cruel as her own: execution and poison at the hands of the empire she once ruled from behind the veil. History remembers what power tries to erase. The Senate feigned oblivion, but soldiers, servants, and families remembered every humiliation, every forced performance, every secret coerced into silence. Messalina's empire of shadows persisted in memory, as a lesson and a warning. Marcus Aurelius, writing a century later, warned, "Look beneath the surface. Let neither the true quality nor the worth of a thing escape you." Her story was proof that an empire could rot from within, nurtured by hypocrisy, fear, and desire. Her legend became a mirror, reflecting the fragility of empires where morality is performance, and obedience is born from terror. Political and sexual transgression were not just stories, they were weapons she wielded with precision. Shame can outlive swords and crowns. Power, secrecy, and corruption were not relics of Rome alone. Modern institutions, governments, and corporations still thrive on silenced truths, shared complicity, and fear of exposure. Messalina's ghost lingers wherever power and shame coexist, a reminder that history's darkest lessons endure beyond official records. Even as centuries pass, her name resonates, a shadow over every palace where ambition meets desire, where morality is negotiated, and where silence serves as the ultimate bond. The past does not vanish, it waits in the shadows, ready to be remembered.